All right. Thank you guys so much for allowing me this opportunity to be with you guys, to interview with you guys. What I'm going to do now is, at this point in our lesson, we have already listened to the poem once. So we've already listened to it. Now we're going to go back and analyze it. All right, students. So we just finished listening to The Highwayman. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to the poem and we're going to break it apart. And we are going to analyze it just to help us better understand what we're reading, because poetry is difficult to read. So our objective is that we are going to analyze the poem by The Highwayman by Alfred Knowles for understanding. And then come the end of this lesson, I want you to be able to justify your understanding and your thought process. Why do you know that this is what it means? Why do you know that this is what the author is trying to say? All right. So in order for us to be able to understand the poem, The Highwayman, we need to know what a highwayman is. So this poem is based off of a true story during the 18th century. And highwaymen were robbers. They were people who robbed from the rich and they gave to the poor. They usually dressed very nicely, had nice clothes, and they were highly wanted by King James's men. Okay. All right. So the first stanza is, the wind was a torrent of darkness among the gusty trees. The moon was a ghosty gallant tossed by upon the cloudy seas. The road was a ribbon of moonlight under the purple moor, and the highwayman came riding. The highwayman came riding up to the old inn door. So this stanza uses a lot of figurative language. We have metaphors and we have repetition. Okay, so the metaphor, the first three lines are metaphors, and we don't know what they mean. You know, why did the author use the wind was a torrent of darkness among the gusty trees? It makes it more interesting to read, right? Instead of saying the wind was blowing really hard. So when I first started analyzing this poem, I read that first line. I was like, I don't even know what the word torrent means. So if I don't know what a word means, I have to look it up. And I'm a very audio and visual learner. So I had to look at pictures. What does it mean? Okay, so the word torrent means a violent, rushing stream, usually in association with water, but it can mean for anything. So we know in this line, that the author meant that the wind was blowing really hard through the trees. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, in this box over to the right, I'm going to restate each line in my own words. And I want you to do on your copy the same thing that I'm doing on my copy. So what I write, I want you to write as well. The wind was blowing hard through the trees. Okay, perfect. All right, the moon was a ghosty gallant tossed upon the cloudy seas. There's another word that I don't know, right? And you can see that there's a one next to it. That one tells you that at the bottom, it actually gave you the definition already. It tells you that it's a sailing ship. Okay, so the moon was a ghostly sailing ship tossed upon the cloudy seas. So you can tell by the word ghostly that the author is trying to give you some sort of mysterious connotation, right? He was using words to help you use that imagery in your head to picture this creepy moon with all the clouds, okay? So what I'm going to say on the next line is the cloud, or the moon, was floating behind the clouds. So it's floating behind the clouds, kind of creepy, eerie, okay? Just setting that mysterious mood. The road was a ribbon of moonlight over the purple moor. So there's another number over the word moor. So the word moor means open land. So if it's saying that the road was a ribbon of moonlight, we picture ribbons, right? Just something that you would tie in your hair, or you'd have on a blanket. And what it's saying is that it was lit by the moonlight. So it's telling us that all we could really see in this open land was just a lit road by the moon. All we could see was the lit road from the moonlight. Right, so then these last three lines, it says, and the highwayman came riding. The highwayman came riding up to the old inn door. Why did the author use that repetition? Why did he use the word riding? Could be one of two reasons. He could use it because the highwayman was riding fast. He could use it because he'd been riding for a long time. We don't know which one it is. The poem doesn't tell us. So what I'm going to write is the Highwayman. I'm actually going to abbreviate it by HWM. Highwayman was riding his horse for a long time, or he was riding it fast. Right? We don't know which one it is. So the author used the repetition to emphasize the point. You emphasize that point, that he was riding either quickly or for a long time, but he was determined to get to the end. So you can see in the box underneath where I wrote, there's a line. The line underneath is where we're going to be pulling out those plot elements of this narrative poem. Plot elements, every story has one. Poems have them too. The very beginning of a plot element is the exposition. That's where the author introduces the setting, the characters, the conflict, right? So the author introduced the setting and one of the characters. So I'm going to put EX for exposition, letting us know that that's what we're working on. That's what I'm seeing. And the author introduced the scene or the setting, right? It's nighttime. And he also introduced the Highwayman. So that's all really that we got in that first one. Okay. So in the second stanza, what we're going to do is we're actually going to analyze this stanza together. I'm going to talk. I may ask for questions. We'll see. Okay. He had a French cocked hat on his forehead and a bunch of lace at his chin, a coat of claret velvet and breeches of brown doe skin. They fitted with never a wrinkle. His boots were up to the thigh, and he rode with a jeweled twinkle. His pistol butt a twinkle, his rapier hilt a twinkle under the jeweled sky. So this one, they're just describing the Highwayman. They're describing what he looks like. But I want you guys to look at the connotation, right? Twinkle, jeweled, right? Laces, all of these words have what type of connotation? Perfect, positive, right? So we know that either the Highwayman is going to be a positive person, or we're going to like him or something. We're going to have a good feeling about this guy. Okay, so they're describing what he looks like. And what do you mean by he's got a French cocked hat? I don't know what that means. So here's a picture of the Highwayman. It's the only picture I could find from like a frontal view. A French cocked hat is a three-pointed hat that would stay on his head. And you can see here that this little bundle that's at his neck, that's what they were referring to by the lace at his throat. It was just like a big poofy thing. Fancy people, rich people, upper class people wore them during that time. You can see his red coat, his boots, they went up to his knees. His clothes are very tight-fitting. He looks very proper, like he is a good person, right? Obviously, he robs people, but he's still a good person. At least he's dressed like one. So I'm going to write here that he is describing what he looks like. Okay, he is dressed nice and he's armed, well armed. We know that he's well armed because it says his pistol butts, which is like the handle of a gun, and was a twinkle, and his rapier hilt was a twinkle. So we know that the word rapier hilt means the handle of a sword. So he's got guns and he's got swords and he's ready. Okay. And they're comparing him to jewels and twinkling. Jewels have the positive, they're pretty, they're precious, they're worth money. So that's what we're going to do. There wasn't any more else on the plot element side of things that were introduced in this section. They were really just describing what the Highwayman looked like. So what we're going to do for the third stanza and a few more stanzas is we're going to break up into breakout rooms, and I'm going to assign each one of you guys a line, and you and your partner are going to read and analyze that line, and then we're going to come back together and we're going to analyze the poem together. And I will be asking you guys to justify your thinking, so please make sure that you are able to explain to me why. And I will be speaking to both of you guys. Okay? So in this part of the lesson, what I would do is I would throw them in breakout rooms. Well, first I would make sure that the students understood the directions. I would have them repeat them to me. So I would make sure that the students understood the directions. I would throw them in a breakout room, and then we'd get back together and we would do one stanza at a time. This is what this read. This is why did you understand? What were your questions? Was there anything that you needed help on? So that's what I would do. And then I would go through and I would have the students on the last page describe to me, these last two stanzas in your own words. This is what I want you to do. I want you to explain to me what it meant by he spurred to the west and he did not know who stood bowed. I want you to explain, what does that mean? That Bess is the one that's dead, but he didn't know that until someone told him. And then he was angry, and then he went back and they ended up killing him anyways. So really, it's the justification of the thinking that I'm really wanting them to be able to stop, look up words that they don't know to find their understanding. And then we would come back together and we would read these last two stanzas, and I would emphasize the point that, this is the resolution. This is where they're closing it up. They're saying that, they still haunt that area at the time. So I just want to say thank you guys for allowing me this interview. If you have any questions, please reach out, let me know, and you guys have a great day.